You're listening to the IFF TV podcast.
Hello, yes, and welcome to Irish Football Fan TV. Ger Brown with you today in the hot seat, where I'm delighted to be joined by Gary Spain and Andy Bell to talk about the debate. Two stories that have come back up in news headlines surrounding an All-Ireland national team and an All-Ireland league. As I mentioned, we've got our own Gary Spain here, and we're delighted to be joined by a guest, Andy Bell from the Spirit 2016 podcast. Lads, how is the form on this Wednesday morning?
All good, Ger.
Yes, not bad at all. It's bizarre weather, I think, in the UK and Ireland at the minute. It's 1 minute it seems to be 20 degrees, the next is snowing down. So it's just typical, isn't it? But yeah, thanks for having me and looking forward to this.
Yeah, we've gone from getting sunburned to getting frostbite in space of 48 hours there over the Easter weekend. It is mad. We thought we had summer last week, and now we're back into winter in April. So as I touched on there, I suppose we just have to come back with the international March break, which is, I think it's fair to say, with both disappointing campaigns for both teams on the island. It's looking definitely unlikely in our case, the Republic, that we're going to be going to Qatar. And Northern Ireland's case, not much healthier, although at least you have a point on the board with that draw against Bulgaria. But it has led to a little bit of debate about the possibility of an all-Ireland team. A senator down here in the Republic of Ireland from Monaghan, Fianna Fáil, Robbie Gallagher, he brought up the topic last week about that we're too small of a nation to have two separate football teams on this island. Just even read some of the quotes that he said. The reality is that for two small nations like Northern Ireland and the Republic to have two soccer teams on a small island, one island, and expect them to compete at international level is simply not on anymore. He then also went on to refer to our nation's unity and pointed to Ireland's success at rugby, where we compete with the very best, and obviously made reference to the rugby team's recent victory against England in the Six Nations and how they competed in the 2019 World Cup. And then his points were further backed up by Seanad leader Regina Doherty, saying it is something that we should be thinking about. Gary, I suppose, get from your kind of point of view first. I suppose you actually have a small bit of interest in the rugby. I get kind of the point where he's coming from there, but I think like the competitive kind of side of things in rugby, you're talking about maybe 8 countries minimum. Ireland are in that strong category. So for us to be expecting to beat England is nothing kind of new. But overall, in general, what do you make of them points kind of made by Robbie, and for someone who's been probably heard this debate going back as far back as the 70s and 80s?
Yeah, I probably find it unhelpful, to be honest, Ger, because I never heard of Robbie talking about anything in the context of Irish football, or Regina Doherty for that matter. And I think some of it comes from people who have a desire to see one country on this island and then just see, oh yeah, we want one team. I mean, the difference in rugby is there was never a breakaway or a split. I mean, it's always been one team on the island. And it might actually be uncomfortable for some people, but we do also play as the British and Irish Lions. And in fact, for many years, it was known as the British Lions. But so I think this is very unhelpful. It's probably more of an issue for Andy and for the Northern Ireland fans, because I know it's a very hot topic for them. I suppose most of us in the Republic wouldn't have any objection to an All-Ireland team, but I don't think realistically it's going to happen. And I don't think it's something that there's any real desire for, certainly among the Northern Ireland fans. And you can make the point about in rugby that the Ireland rugby team is in the top 8. It was briefly best in the world. And yeah, I am a big rugby fan, but it is totally different. And there are only about 10 or 11 countries that compete in world rugby at the highest level anyway. So it's not as great an achievement as it sounds. And the reality is an all-Ireland football team wouldn't be significantly better than either of the current sides.
Yeah, and they will bring you in kind of here. I suppose the main reason, I suppose, we feel that a politician from down here is bringing it up is because we've probably in many ways reached a kind of a new low, or certainly one of our lowest points of that recent defeat against Luxembourg, and it very much is the view that we're in a transition under Stephen Kenny. But you also have a new manager, Ian Barraclough, taking over from Michael O'Neill, which was a very successful period. And similar to Stephen, it has been a rough ride so far for Ian. I know he had that playoff victory against Bosnia back in October, but another Nations League campaign which was winless. I touched on as well 2 winless games so far from your World Cup campaign, albeit that draw against Bulgaria, but that was seen as a disappointment. What is the feeling so far of the Ian Barraclough reigns in Northern Ireland from their point of view?
I think it's performances have been encouraging under Barclough so far. We saw maybe a slight bit of a decline in the later Michael O'Neill years. Obviously, we had the brilliant Euro 2016 campaign. Both nations had that, and then we went on a superb run in 2018 as well to get to the playoff final. We're fortunately undone by a scandalous decision in the end with a handball on Corey Evans, and then came the Euro 2020 qualifying campaign where, yes, we had Germany and Holland in the group, but I think there was a feeling amongst Northern Ireland fans that maybe for players like Steve Davis, who's now 36, for Johnny Evans, Craig Cathcart, these linchpins of the side, and Hughes and Macaulay who've retired, there was a feeling that they were being phased out, and it was a case of whether players coming through like Stuart Dallas and Paddy McNair can really take the mantle of those players and become those senior linchpins on our side. So I think Barraclough coming in, the idea was he did so well with the under-21s, and we came second in our Euro 2019 qualifying group, I think it was. Beat Spain away from home, which anyone who kind of follows under-21 football knows Spain just don't lose games. They win tournaments pretty much every year. The players coming through like Mayoral and Fornals, who were playing in La Liga at the time, compared to the likes of Shane Lavery and Gavin White, who were playing in the Irish league. So he did such an incredible job, and I think the idea is that over the next 2 or 3 years, the likes of Davis, the likes of Cathcart, and others and Lafferty as well, will be phased out, and it's on him to bring through the likes of Lavery and White and Galbraith, McCalmont. Maybe this campaign's a little bit too soon for them, but certainly in the future. And I think he just needs to be given that bit of time. As I say, performances were good. In Italy, actually, second half, we were fantastic. Had a lot of the ball, showed a lot of bravery for Northern Ireland side. Usually 2-0 down at half time, and Northern Ireland sides of the past would be thinking, let's just not get hammered here, damage limitation. But we came out and had actually had the better of the chances second half. And Bulgaria, it was just one of those frustrating nights. They're always going to come and pack 10 men behind the ball. We had chances. We probably did enough to win 1 or 2-0. But in the end, it just didn't quite fall for us. And that seems to be the pattern under Barraclough. Things don't seem to be quite falling for us so far, but I do have confidence that we can pick up some wins in this campaign. And then looking towards the next Nations League, which of course we're in League C, which in theory provides a clearer pathway to Euro 2024, as it will be. We have to look at that and think I'll kind of judge him then. But yeah, so far just a bit of bad luck, I think, is a prevailing sense among Northern Ireland fans.
Yeah, just kind of another thing as well, Gary, like when we talk about there's a lot of complications if we were to get behind an All-Ireland team. Like you have to talk about where you're going to play games. Is it going to be Windsor? Is it going to be Dublin? There's a strong case for both games. I know for both grounds. I know the Aviva is a bigger stadium. You have situations surrounding the flag, national anthem, and stuff like that. But a big thing as well, I think both countries, for small countries, can point towards is proud history and proud tradition. We've both been to 3 World Cups. We're both at the last European Championships as well. We were always at Euro 2012. I think we obviously know, certainly since Jack Charlton's time, maybe the exception of the Stephen Staunton era and the last campaign on the trap, we've always been at least competitive or thereabouts of qualifying. And Northern Ireland can kind of point towards the same, as Andy touched on there. They weren't far away from qualifying for Euro 2020. Should have, whatever way you want to look at it, made the 2018 World Cup. Had that bad luck totally against Switzerland. Even the second leg played very well over there. And you can even go back as far as Euro 2008, a couple of bad results against Iceland and Latvia probably cost you qualifying for that tournament. And even in 2010 World Cup qualifiers, you bet Poland through with Czech Republic. So there's even that kind of point of view that both sides can point that we actually can compete on our own.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing to remember, Jerry, is actually we broke away. The FAI actually broke away from the IFA. Actually, even before it's the centenary of the FAI, and it's probably also the centenary of Northern Ireland. But the IFA has been around since 1880, and the FAI actually broke away before. I don't want to get into the politics too much, but actually before partition. So, I mean, effectively, what was then the Leinster Association, because most of the football was run in what is now the Republic of Ireland, was run out of Leinster. So the Leinster FA actually broke away prior to partition, and it basically the independence, the War of Independence. I'm not too au fait with my Irish history, but the War of Independence happened after that, and the Republic of Ireland, what became the Republic of Ireland, was formed after that. So, in theory, you would have to argue, if there was to be any sort of a team, there is no way the FAI are going to go 100 years later, go crawling back and say, "Sorry, we made a mistake. Please take us back," or anything like that. So it would be probably a very different argument. But I don't see. I just don't see it happening. I don't see anything in the football authorities to any impetus there to create one team. And as you mentioned, you'd have all the issues about flags and anthems and everything like that. And even in rugby, that's a little bit contentious, because when Ireland play in the Aviva, they play Ireland's call and they fly the four provinces flag, but they also play Oran Avian, or the Soldier Song, and fly the tricolour. Whereas in other sports that are on All-Ireland bases, like hockey or cricket, I know there's no symbols of the Republic of Ireland. So they just use, I know hockey just use Ireland's call and just use an Ireland Hockey Union flag. And in cricket, again, it's all Ireland, but it's very careful to just use neutral symbols. In fact, in the past, in rugby, up until 1954, when Ireland played in home games in Ravenhill, the anthem used was "God Save the Queen," and the Union Jack was flown. And in theory, that was meant to happen for the game in 2007 against Italy, but the IRFU designated as an away game, which I know raised some hackles north of the border as well. So, there's huge issues around flags, anthems, everything like that. But I don't think there's any great impetus there to create an All-Ireland team. It's just something for some politicians to spout off about. And to be honest, I'm not aware of that senator having much interest in football, or making any case to get Monaghan United back in the League of Ireland or anything like that, which I would hope. They're sadly missed from my perspective. I'd love to see them back. And there's a fine ground there in Monaghan Town, and maybe that's what they should be focused on.
Yeah, I think we'd like to see any team like that went out of the league come back in. And I think, as you said, like, I'm not even familiar with that senator's name before, but I think it could be just a quick case if he switched on the television on that Saturday evening against Luxembourg and just seeing, oh, Jesus, Irish football's in a dire state. But we know, like, it goes back further than that, and there's more issues, and that this result was kind of a small bit on the cards, and it wasn't overly unsurprised. I touched on
listen,
there.
Listen, guys, if you need any sort of group therapy about losing to Luxembourg, I'm your man. 7 years ago, they actually took 4 points off us, so you can still aim for not being as bad as us that campaign.
It also worries me as well. I think Azerbaijan took 4 points off you that campaign, and we have them coming up as well. But you did take a point in Lisbon, so that's keeping me optimistic for September.
Yeah, I'll beat Russia as well. But although they're not in the group, but yeah.
The equivalent of Serbia, we might beat them in the Aviva as well. But I touched on it there, Andy, like, despite the fact we are, like, a small island and we have 2 football teams on that, but we both have great traditions. Like we touched on, we've made 3 World Cups. You made 3 World Cups even before that, like 2 of them under Billy Bingham's days. Like the Jack Charlton days are just so revered and lived in this country. And like for someone like me, having to listen to like Gary, who was around and experienced that, it kind of almost kind of saddens and kind of depresses me a small bit. Like for someone like yourself, probably a similar age background profile, too young to remember them heavy days of the 80s for Northern Ireland football, are they still kind of like cherished in the same way as we look back at the Jack Charlton days here?
Yeah, definitely. I think because obviously there's a 1958 World Cup, which I don't think anyone really, or certainly there's a very small proportion of people who are still alive remember that. And then you've got people who grew up with the 82 and the 86 sides. And then there was like, a 30-year wait until Euro 2016. And to be fair, I grouped the whole sort of 6 years under Michael O'Neill into those kind of glory days idea. Coming second in a group involving, the Czech Republic. given everything against Germany and Holland as well. It really was such an amazing 6 years. So from my perspective, I'm 22, and I kind of grew up. Yes, I saw the wins against England, the wins against Spain, but also the years under kind of Nigel Worthington as well, and early days of Michael O'Neill, where I'd go into school and chat to my mates after, for example, the Luxembourg game or the Azerbaijan game, and we'd sort of think, like, will we ever see Northern Ireland at a major tournament again? They were genuine conversations we were having. So I think for us, for people my age, and really for anyone under the age of 40 or so, that those Michael O'Neill years were the Billy Bingham days, were the 82-86 World Cup, the Jerry Armstrong, Pat Jennings, Norman Whiteside, that, like, those players for us now, that is what it is for our fathers and grandfathers and stuff. So yeah, I'd say absolutely, they are still revered in that way. And we've got a team now, or had a team in the last 2-3 years, who could be compared to that, and that's kind of almost the greatest compliment you can give that side. So yeah, I think going forward, it's you touch on the fact that obviously the Senators brought this up after the Luxembourg defeat, and listen, it's the exact same up in Northern Ireland here. Every time kind of both teams lose a game or are underperforming slightly, it's always gets brought up. It's always debated the next morning. It's kind of like a bit of a boring debate on here, because you'll turn on BBC Radio Ulster and you'll just get the worst of both sides going at each other, and it's an embarrassment. Whereas on here, obviously, we can have a bit of a genuine debate about it. But I mean, Gary, you mentioned the rugby team there, and I think it's interesting because there's a lot of people who talk about the success of the Irish rugby team, and I support the Irish rugby team, of course. I think while yeah, we can make the point about the fact that there's only like 7 or 8 serious contenders, but also it's they're a side who has overachieved. I think to be 4th in the world, even though, as I say, the standard of rugby is not the same as the standard of football worldwide. To be 4th in the world is such an incredible achievement, but I don't think that success could possibly be replicated in the football. A 6-nation tournament, I think it's only become 6 nations fairly recently. It was 5 and 4 before that. So you're going to have periods of success in an annual tournament with only 6 nations, especially when one of those is Italy, really, who never really compete. And there's always 1 or 2 teams, like I think Scotland going through a little bit of a lull at the moment. There's always 1 or 2 teams that aren't really competing. So you're talking about if you're going through a purple patch of rugby, and you're competing against 3, maybe 4 maximum nations every year. So you're going to have some sort of success, and that's not to take away from what the Irish rugby team have done. But in World Cups, I don't think we've got past the quarterfinal, as I say, with only 8 or 9 serious contenders. So there is kind of a question mark as to whether this incredible success that the Irish rugby team have seen, and gets debated all the time around the football, whether it's quite that. But you look at both our teams at the minute, you guys maybe have around a low-level Premier League to Championship side. I'd say we have a Championship-level side with a couple of Premier League players, but it's balanced out by some League One players up front. So would an All-Ireland team, in theory, would it give us any more strength? Possibly. It would give us a bit more depth, but the overall level of the team, there's still going to be no superstars. There's still going to be lacking a bit of attacking quality, and neither team would still be great in either box, which I think is a big problem with Northern Ireland at the moment. So, I'm sure we'll get on to the kind of idea whether I'd like to see it or not, but even from purely a quality and sporting point of view, I'm not sure it would make a massive difference, as Gary says.
Yeah, even just like to touch on it there, like if we're to join the 2 teams together now, Gary, I kind of find that like we'd have top heavy competition for defence, and then after that, like it's slim pickings, because defence is kind of where we're both very, very strong. Like you could have genuine debates over who starts on the left hand side between Jamal Lewis and Enda Stevens, possibly throw Stuart Dallas in that conversation, although I know he plays on the right for Northern Ireland, left hand side for Leeds. But again, like if that situation, you could have Dallas, Doherty, Coleman. We're looking at centre back partnerships like Evans, Cathcart, very solid in Northern Ireland. We have the likes of Coleman slotted in right centre back. John Egan, when he's fit, Darragh O'Shea's been really impressive. So like it's kind of almost a case of like if we were to join the 2 teams together, it's almost now just adding to both teams' current strengths. Like Andy's touched on there, putting the ball in the back, and that's been a major problem for them. We know exactly how much of a big problem that is for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's even though we got the couple of goals in Serbia and scored 1 against Qatar, I think that is the bulk of our problems, and that was maybe the option. It's not just actually putting the ball in the net; it's creating the chances as well. And if you look back at the Northern Ireland side, and Andy touched on the fantastic success they had under Michael O'Neill, there's probably a feeling that maybe it just got away. If you go back to that playoff against Switzerland, and yes, they were undone by an absolutely disgraceful refereeing decision, but they still failed to score in the playoff over 180 minutes. And if you go into I know Northern Ireland actually came a lot closer than us to qualifying for Euro 2020, and that went to extra time in the playoff final against Slovakia. I think, if I remember rightly, they hit the post because we were playing in Wembley at the same time, but Northern Ireland hit the post, which would have won it. But again, in extra time, they couldn't find the winning goal, and Slovakia got the winner. So yeah, I don't think actually a combined team would be that particularly much stronger, but I actually think a lot of the opposition, and most of it, almost all of it, would be from Northern Ireland, but would be about the whole identity of the Northern Ireland team being taken away effectively. And I suppose maybe I'll get Andy to talk about this more, but I've actually gone to quite a few of the games in Windsor Park, and there is, or the National Stadium, as I should call it now. I know that's even, the name is now a debate between Glentoran and Linfield fans, but
Indeed.
I still know it as Windsor Park. But the one thing that has been kept in the new stadium is the fantastic atmosphere that the Northern Ireland fans have managed to create, and the green and white army do bring fantastic noise and fantastic atmosphere. It's something actually we've probably lacked in a lot of games in the Aviva. And we have a fantastic atmosphere when we play away from home, and fantastic away support, but probably not so good at home. Whereas if you go to nearly any Northern Ireland home game, there is the stadium's absolutely rocking. It's quite a small capacity, less than 20,000, but when it's full, it's absolutely rocking. And I think that helped to get some amazing results in recent years. Andy touched on the wins over England, and he must have been very young at those with David Healy and the
I was sent to bed at half time, actually. So yeah, okay. Not better about that.
Yeah. I was actually at the Spain game when David Healy got the hat-trick, which was absolutely unbelievable. That was obviously in the old stadium, but even in the new stadium, there's brilliant atmosphere. And even in the last campaign, the Dutch were denied winning the group because Northern Ireland managed to hold them to scoreless draw in the National Stadium.
Yeah, and that game actually was that was kind of like, obviously in European Championship qualifying, it goes on head to head rather than what is his goal difference in World Cup qualifying, and we kind of worked it out, the eternal optimists. We kind of worked out, if we can just beat Estonia and Belarus home and away, which we did in the end, that they turned out to be our first four fixtures. If we could just do that and say either Germany take full points against Holland or Holland take full points against Germany, we worked out that we could create a kind of playoff scenario. And albeit actually Germany and Holland beat each other away from home, we still worked out that if we took 4 points from the Netherlands, that we could qualify, which sounds ridiculous, but we were 1-0 up in Rotterdam until the 80th minute. Josh McGuinness came off the bench and put us 1 up. So we were in a situation where if we'd just held on for 10 minutes there, they ended up winning 3-1. That draw at Windsor Park would have actually qualified us for the Euros ahead of Holland. So when you look back now and you see the likes of Germany, Germany, we all know their defeat to North Macedonia, and they've been in the, kind of on a downward spiral, I think, for a few years. I think media and supporters over there are quite disenfranchised with what Joachim Löw's doing, and Holland as well, who got hammered by Turkey and seem to be, they didn't qualify for 2 or 3 tournaments in a row at one point. So when you look back at that now, we were actually a lot closer than we thought, and maybe, it was a bit of an opportunity missed for another one of those giant killings. But yeah, for those 5 minutes, we were 1-0 up in Rotterdam, were the best 5 minutes of my life, I think.
Even better than Leon in 2016 when you bet Ukraine?
Well, I'm talking about sort of short-term happiness that was cut off straight away. You know, that was the Kings of Leon. That was about a week long high. Whereas for the McGuinness goal, we're pegged back and brought back down to earth straight away. But yeah, do you, just for Northern Ireland to be kind of competing at that level, or just to have big games is what we always talk about as Northern Ireland fans. We're not going to get to every tournament. We're not going to get to the vast majority of tournaments, but to have big games at Windsor Park and to get excited and to believe. Is what we aim for, which is why the kind of Bulgaria thing and what is most likely a campaign over is so disappointing.
Yeah, we know about short-term happiness as well, going back to November 2017, and we know how that badly ended, Gary.
Yeah, we don't talk about November 2017. Come on.
No, that was a bad week. That was a bad week in general. Just
kind of maybe
we
can't blame the referee though, Jared.
No, we can't. We can blame Christian Eriksen though, maybe. But just maybe one last point I might just talk about maybe before we go into kind of maybe talk about combined 11s or who would make the Republic of Ireland team from Northern Ireland, vice versa. Just kind of like the buy-in from the fans, because it's just a tradition and history. There is it there with rugby. Even like look at the cricket team, the hockey team, like especially the women's hockey team, what they achieved getting to a World Cup final a couple of years ago. Cricket team making 3 World Cups in a row, beating England, West Indies, Pakistan, phenomenal achievements, and like it seemed to get the buy-in of the whole nation. Like with football, everyone will kind of just think back to like, well, it's only 2.5 years ago Republic of Ireland fans booed God Save the Queen at the Aviva Stadium. But you do think back to them great days of the summer of 2016, and both sets of fans were given the Medal of Paris for their behaviour. And the people of France just identified all of us as just one, as just people from Ireland, as Irish. And I was there, Gary was there. I'm not sure if you were there, Andy, but you mixed
me A-levels.
Yeah, so you're a bit too young. But we mixed with people from all nations, and like that included Northern Ireland fans, and there was just pure, genuine, good fun, good crack, good banter. Like there was nothing kind of like in terms of like, you know, history or anything else like that. Do you think that like that is a sign that like we are now moving forward and that we can kind of get on, that's the way to look forward, and not like the small minority that kind of let us down? I felt embarrassed that day in the Aviva when we booed God Save the Queen.
Yeah, I think that night in the Aviva, it was unpleasant for both anthems. It was always going to be that way. I always think, I know FIFA stipulate you have to have an anthem played, but it would have been a lot easier just to get on with the football, I think. In Euro 2016, yeah, both fans got along incredibly. We both, as you say, got incredibly good media coverage for how we got along with each other and other supporters there. And I think was it in Nice? Were you guys maybe playing in Nice second or third game, or there was a reason there were some Republic of Ireland fans in Nice at one point? That's where we played our first game, our defeat to Poland, and you know all the fans were out drinking on the street, enjoying things together. And it was actually, from what I hear, obviously I wasn't there, but it was actually a group of 20-25 local French hooligans who tried to cause a bit of trouble, and everyone just kind of told them to do one. Yeah, everyone kind of united behind it and said, listen, we're not about this here, you know, maybe 20, 30 years ago, whatever. But right now we're here, we're on holiday, we're watching our teams playing a major tournament and we're enjoying ourselves. And I think that is what it's coming down to. Northern Ireland fans will always say, because a lot of the time we have to travel out of Dublin Airport to get to away games. It's just easier and cheaper at times. So, you know, there's never any problems down there. Said the Republic of Ireland fans make the Northern Ireland fans feel very welcome, chat to them about the football. And I think it's really a minority of supporters up here on both sides. So you've got the kind of worst of both sides up here that cause the trouble. I've never known any Northern Ireland supporters to have any problems with Republic of Ireland supporters from down south, but there are a couple, you know, up here who maybe want to cause some trouble, and as I say, absolutely equally on both sides. But just to kind of my overarching point on why I wouldn't want it, and Gary's kind of touched on it, and you have as well there, Jerry, is the identity thing. And you know, for years in Northern Ireland, without getting too political, but I think you do have to a little bit with this kind of debate, is for years, you know, you were either British or you were Irish, and there was no in between. You had to be kind of staunchly on either side of that. Whereas, I mean, I'm not speaking for all Northern Ireland fans here by any stretch of the imagination, but for me, and certainly a lot of my friends who go to the games and support Northern Ireland, we very much see ourselves as Northern Irish. I wouldn't see myself as British personally or Irish. So, for example, you know, at the rugby, I wouldn't sing Ireland's Call because don't consider myself necessarily Irish, but I also don't sing God Save the Queen at the football. I think it's long overdue, since Northern Ireland should have their own specific anthem, the way that Wales and Scotland do. And for one reason, it's just a boring dirge of an anthem. That's my first issue with it. But also I think on a level, you know, it's uncomfortable, I think, for the Catholic and nationalist players playing for Northern Ireland. the likes of White and McGinn, and going back a few years, you've got Armstrong and Pat Jennings and players like that, and Jim Magilton. So I would love something that Northern Ireland fans can all sing. It's a Northern Ireland specific anthem, and both sides of the divide can be happy and can link arms and can sing it with pride. So that's the only real thing. The anthem's the only real thing for me that doesn't feel right about Northern Ireland. They feel like my lads, they feel like my team, they feel like the guys from my wee part of the world, which go on the international stage and overperform. So for me, it's just a question of identity. Yes, a lot of people will say the team could be slightly stronger, and you guys talk about November 2017 there, when Northern Ireland were very close, and Wood having a couple of extra Premier League players, the likes of Robbie Brady or whoever was around the team at the time, Wood having them in the Northern Ireland team, could that have maybe pushed us over the line? Possibly, but I think you're splitting hairs, and for most tournaments which neither team really come close to qualifying for, I don't think it would make a big difference at all. But yeah, for me, it's just a case of, like, I think even for you guys as well, I've heard a lot of Republic of Ireland supporters say that the team is representative of all 32 counties anyway, with some players who've maybe defected down south. So even from a nationals point of view, I think you've got a team down there that represents you, and we've got a team up here that represents us. And I think the sooner we can just accept that and move forward with it, and you listen, Windsor Park's come so far in the last 20 years of the amalgamation and the Football for All campaign. That's just pretty much stamped sectarianism completely out of it, which is great. And I think that game in 2017, aside from the anthems, which are always going to be a bit messy, I think, aside from that, I think there was a bit of banter between both sets of fans, but ultimately it was a good occasion and a decent enough game. I think from our perspective, I think we had the better of that game, even though we didn't win it. But yeah, for me, it's just a case of that. It's not like as I say, I do support the Ireland rugby team, but in the same way that I would support Team GB at the Olympics, I'll sit there and I'll want them to win, but I could never have the same affinity for it as I do for a Northern Ireland team. And that's just the way I feel and my identity, and I can't really help that. So it's definitely not like an anti-Irish or an anti-British thing. It's just I see myself as Northern Irish, and that's where my pride is in sport with Northern Irish athletes and Northern Irish teams.
Yeah, that friendly in 2018, Darren Randolph was very much our man of the match, so you should have really won it. Gary,
we still haven't forgotten Jordan Jones's miss that night. So,
Gary, you just want to get in there with something as well?
Yeah, it's more. Sorry, just losing my train of thought there. But Andy, do you see many of the younger people supporting England? Because I remember famously for the David Healy game, Billy Hutchinson talking about he'd support England rather than Northern Ireland, and they're maybe losing their British identity by playing in green shirts with a Celtic cross on the badge or something like that. Would many of the young people in Northern Ireland support England, particularly when England are, relatively speaking, so successful at the moment?
No, definitely not. Absolutely not. I mean, as I say, when I mentioned earlier about like debates the next morning on BBC Radio Ulster or whatever, you will get the odd, people from both extremes kind of talking about, I support England, I support the motherland, and they feel like that's it's kind of like the idea. I think a lot of the older generation on club football would always support the British teams in Europe, whereas that's something I don't identify with at all personally. And I really enjoy seeing England get beat. I really, really do. I think it's hilarious every summer how they build themselves up. I think they've got a team now who really should be competing for the European Championships, but I think the kind of typical English conservatism and pragmatism is, for example, not selecting Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think that's what's ultimately going to kill them, and I'll be enjoying it when I do so. But no, definitely not. None of my mates support England. It's like, as I say, I'm not bothered about Wales or Scotland either. I wouldn't support the Republic of Ireland at a tournament. I wouldn't necessarily, cheer against them. It's just I'd be neutral, kind of the way I would any other game. But no, like as for England and supporting English teams, it's not for me. My only quandary, I'm a big Liverpool supporter, so when I'm watching Trent and Jordan Henderson go out, I don't want to see them gutted, and obviously it means a lot to those guys as well. So sometimes I sort of think, I wouldn't mind if they do well, just from the perspective of I'd love to see, for example, Jordan Henderson lift the World Cup. But apart from that, in terms of like an identity thing, no, absolutely not.
As a Liverpool fan myself, and I don't think we might have to worry about Trent Alexander-Arnold at the Euros after last night's display.
Well, yeah, I know. Although he did. There was a point where he makes a very good defensive intervention as well. So
That's right,
I think he absolutely, I think it's crazy, and it's very indicative of, I said, the English pragmatism that they're favouring kind of defensive solidity, which I think is massively overplayed with Trent. His defensive abilities, I think he is a good defender. It's just he's so good going forward that people think he must kind of have this serious weakness. But I think that'll ultimately play into it. They're a conservative side. They've got these incredible players, but ultimately they'd rather play like an English side. What was the title of the Rafa Honigstein book? Is Better, Faster, Stronger or something, and it always has been about kind of physicality and pragmatism for England, which I think will kill them in the end, because other nations are simply better technically.
One more thing, Andy, I'd just like to touch on, because you mentioned all the great work the amalgamation and everything have done. And I know you're dead right. There's a fantastic neutral atmosphere in Windsor Park, and it's certainly very welcoming and not a problem. I've had my kids and all up there at games, and no problem. I've actually brought other people from the Republic up, and they've all been amazed at the passion as well and the noise. But one concern I have is if we did meet, hopefully, and we'll have full crowds back at games soon. If we did meet in a competitive game, I just have concern about everything that could get dragged up, and people go back to the days. And no, I was at the games in the 90s and the 80s, and I think they were overblown. It was nowhere near as bad as was reported in the media. But having said that, there certainly was quite a bit of sectarianism, and I wonder, would it set back the reputation of both sets of fans if we were to meet, particularly in a crucial competitive game?
I think the media on both sides is always going to kind of jump on any sort of negativity. Jerry mentions about booing "God Save the Queen." We've maybe got a slight problem. The only thing I could say is that at some points in the national anthem, a very small minority of Northern Ireland fans will sing "No Surrender." And what I always say with that is, it's the instrumental part of the anthem, so nobody's singing. So 100 clowns singing that is going to sound really loud on television, but for 99% of the fan base, they're not singing that. They're being respectful and they're staying quiet. And I actually think it's disrespectful to the national anthem to be singing that in the middle of it. But it's things like that. It's minor things like that represent less than 0.5% of supporters that could bring it up. But ultimately, I don't think that's a reason kind of not to play it. I'm always very I never really want to draw the Republic of Ireland, first of all, because it would just absolutely sicken me if you beat us in a competitive game, but also from the perspective of, like, there would just be a media circus around it, and I can't really be bothered with that. I was glad that we played Slovakia in the final, just because I felt like we were well, I feel like we are the better team than Slovakia, and I just felt, with it being Slovakia and not the Republic of Ireland, it would just be based on football and less external factors would be taken out of it. So that was it from a football point of view. I think a competitive game at Windsor Park, what I would say, the very few negative stories that have come out about Northern Ireland fans over the last 5 or 6 years have been, for example, I think there was a friendly against South Korea. We played in maybe 2018, and there were a couple of fans filmed singing alternative lyrics to "Sweet Caroline." And I think the thing with that is, like, on a normal Windsor Park day, when you've got 15,000, 16,000 campaign card holders, it's pretty much the same supporters in there week in, week out. It's international football, but every game, and you never ever see that. You really never see that. And I'm sure there are Northern Ireland supporters in the ground who hold these views, but it's very much self-policing at Windsor Park. It's, if somebody shouts something like that, you'll have 10 people around you saying, "Oh, cut it out. We don't do that here." So I think for a competitive game, that's the first thing you have to factor in. For those friendlies, anyone can get a ticket. Very often the Windsor Park isn't even sold out, so anyone can come along, have a load of pints beforehand, and say something ridiculous, and everyone will jump on that. But for the vast majority, I mean, I'd say there's less than 1,000 tickets go on general sale at Windsor Park these days. I think there's, as I say, 14,000 or so campaign card holders, and then there's an official membership scheme as well. Which pretty much gives you priority. You're paying a little bit more, but it's pretty much like a campaign card, whereas you can get get tickets to whichever game you like. So it's very much like the same supporters coming to Windsor Park every game. It's very much it's very few kind of new supporters who can really get on the ladder and get a ticket, and that frustrates a lot of people. But it definitely means that we get that constant support, and we get that with a very sound fan base at the moment, and that's not really going to alter. And anyone who does come in or maybe sneaks a ticket and tries to start any of that nonsense will just be shut down straight away. I've seen it at Windsor Park, and I'm sure it's only going to keep going in that direction, which I think is great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Just if we were to meet, though, I'd just be concerned that element that would have no interest in going to watch Northern Ireland, even in the major finals, would suddenly try and want to go and just cause trouble or just shout abuse. And hopefully, as you say, they won't be able to get tickets.
But even for the game down in Dublin, I know it was only on sale to campaign card holders. Again, literally, even if there were empty seats or whatever, literally nobody else could get a ticket apart from campaign card holders. So I think the IFA are very aware of that issue. They're very aware that the supporters we have in at the moment are the supporters we want to keep, and therefore, it's if new supporters are being let in, and you do want, for example, young supporters who have never had the chance to build up loyalty points, you do want them to come into the ground, but it does have to be managed in the sense that we don't want a huge influx of those people you're talking about. And I think the way they're doing it right now, I think you wouldn't see really too many problems with it. I mean, I quite enjoyed the in the friendly. I wasn't at the game. I was actually living over in France at the time, but I was watching it on my laptop, and I think James McLean maybe wasn't having his best game that night, and I think the Northern Ireland fans were singing "He's one of our own," which I thought was fantastic. But yeah, I mean, banter like that—that's exactly what you want. It's a rivalry. It's two nations very close together. It's no different from England, Wales, Belgium, Netherlands, whatever. You go on with this all day, but yeah, I think that's as long as it is just that, and the vast majority of supporters on both sides want it to be just that.
Yeah, as long as we see kind of more banter just touched on like that, and the equivalent of the scenes of summer 2016 is definitely starting to head in the right direction, get away from the days of the 80s and 90s. Just kind of one last thing, might touch on this before we go into the All-Ireland League debate, is just kind of maybe instead of doing a combined 11, because we'll probably be here until the next international window in the summer debating, but this is definitely, I think we're going to see our biases shine through and a bit of debate properly between us. Myself and Gary were chatting about this kind of off air, and we were kind of making out Stuart Dallas, Jamal Lewis, Johnny Evans and Stephen Davis would be the four players that we would put from the Northern Ireland team against the Republic team. You could have strong cases, as I touched on, for like Craig Cathcart and Paddy McNair in particular. I think are two players possibly a little bit harsh to miss out on. You're obviously going to have a completely different view on this, Andy, so you might as well get straight into it.
Well, first of all, I definitely wouldn't have Craig Cathcart in the team. Anyone who listens to my podcast knows that I'm not a big fan at all, it's fair to say, but so that's something we can agree on. But yeah, I drew it up. Obviously, we're not going to do the combined 11s, but I drew up a very biased 3-5-2 and a very biased 4-3-3 as well. So I think first of all, yeah, I'd absolutely agree on the four players you mentioned there. I think they definitely get in the side, and there's a few Republic of Ireland players who are definitely in there as well. But the goalkeeper's a bit of a tricky one, because I think you guys have Randolph, who's not playing Premier League football at the moment, or he's on the bench, and Travers and is it Bazunu? Yeah, I butchered the name there. Yeah, both of them are playing in League One, whereas Peacock Farrell, albeit he is on the bench for Burnley week in, week out. He was playing Championship football for a while and did quite well for Leeds for a period. And I think he could go down and play Championship football. That could be his level. And he's given us some great memories as a Northern Ireland fan. Recently, he's kind of tailed off a little bit, making a couple of mistakes, I'd say, due to not having that much sharpness. But I would probably just have him in there ahead of the Republic of Ireland keepers. But with a lot of these ones, we're splitting hairs, aren't we? And you guys will maybe slightly favour the Republic of Ireland choice. And
would you have him ahead of a second choice Liverpool goalkeeper, Caoimhín Kelleher?
Caoimhín Kelleher, yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Kelleher. But again, we've only really seen 3 or 4 games from him, haven't we? Whereas Peacock Farrell, he's 24, he's got 50, 60 club appearances under his belt, whether it's for Leeds, and has, I think, maybe 25 international appearances as well. So yeah, I do rate him. I think Kelleher has that potential, but I'll favour Peacock Farrell for now, just because I am a believer in him. I do think he can get better. He's I think Sean Dyche was saying he's been in the gym and he's got the same kind of physicality as what Nick Pope had at the same age. So I do believe he can go forward and maybe be a great goalkeeper for Northern Ireland for the next 10 years. The other one is McNair, and was difficult because I was looking at the the Republic of Ireland midfielders, and maybe your viewers will be laughing their heads off at me right now for not really knowing what I'm talking about with the Republic of Ireland team. But like Brady and Hourihane are two players I really like, especially Hourihane last season in the Premier League. I think his delivery was absolutely wicked at times, and that bit of quality is very often what Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland lack. But what I would say about that is, Davis obviously gets in, but you've got Brady, and who's I don't think playing really very much in the Premier League this season. He's been on the bench quite a bit for Burnley, and you've Hourihane, who's actually dropped down to the Championship, albeit on loan, and I think he's maybe out of contract this summer. Whereas Paddy McNair is a player I think is definitely going to be playing Premier League next season. He's absolutely got the capabilities. He will be 26, so he's coming into that age where he really has to take his career by the scruff of the neck now. But for a couple of seasons at Middlesbrough, he's been by far their best player, playing either a back three or a central midfield role. And when he plays for Northern Ireland, he just does have that real attacking quality. He's got the delivery, he's got the pass, he can win the free kick and win the foul high up the pitch. So I think, again, splitting hairs between them there, but I'd probably have Paddy McNair in, just based on the fact that his career is going on that uphill trajectory, whereas the other two are maybe on their way, you might disagree, but maybe on their way out of the Premier League at that level.
Yeah, I think definitely McNair would have the age kind of profile, maybe on someone like Brady. But I think age-wise, like he's still only 28, 29, so he's in that bracket where he should be in his peak, in his prime, but fitness just seems to be a major concern for him. And with Hourihane now, I think he's turning 30, 31, and I think you touched on there, he probably seems maybe a little bit more suited to the Championship than the Premier League. He was excellent as well in his brief spell in the Championship with Barnsley when they came up. That led to his move to Aston Villa, where he was a very, very good player there as well. Just kind of touch on there as well, Gary, two other players that I mentioned, and what we both mentioned off air, like Stuart Dallas, I think, has had a very good season with Leeds in the Premiership, and Jamal Lewis, who's just recently fallen out of the Newcastle team, but still has played a lot of football this season with them and with Norwich as well. Anyone else kind of you might make a case for Northern Ireland? Kyle Lafferty obviously is banging in the goals for Kilmarnock, but hasn't quite been doing it really for Northern Ireland for a good while.
No, I think Kyle Lafferty's best days are probably behind him in club football, or even in a Northern Ireland shirt as well. Jamal Lewis, definitely, he looks a real talent, and Stuart Dallas, just his work rate. He just puts in so much effort and work rate, and he's very effective as well. He gets around the pitch so much, and he's been a crucial player for Northern Ireland and for Leeds, as you say. So I think both of them would have to find a place. I think Jamal Lewis might be injured, actually. Is that correct? Maybe I'm wrong on that. Or is he just out?
Yeah, he was injured for the first couple of internationals, but he plays the Bulgaria game, so I think he's back now.
Okay. So, but somebody like him would, I think, get in on the left-hand side, has quite a bit of talent. And possibly a couple for the future that Andy touched on, or Ethan Galbraith and Daniel Ballard, who potentially have could have long international careers, but it would be too early, I think, to pick them on an automatic combined side. We're both probably light on options up front. It's not as if there's anyone screaming out saying they have to be picked from either side.
No, I mean, I've in a 3-5-2, I have got Connolly and Robinson up front. I think, unless we can play, unless we can play Chelsea every week, then we would have Robinson in all times. But all our players, albeit all of them offer something, even the likes of Kyle Lafferty and Josh McGuinness really offer that physical presence. And kind of like when you're playing international sides, they're not really used to coming up against that type of striker. And Washington and White and Lavery are kind of give you that, run the channels, give you that work rate and running in behind. But yeah, ultimately, they're all playing at League One level or Scottish Championship in the case of Liam Boyce. So yeah, I think even though you guys do have your problems in that department, it has to be the two Irish lads up front. But if we were going for a 4-3-3, which is interesting, I think Seamus Coleman obviously gets in the team somewhere. In a 3-5-2, that would probably be in a back three, so I could put Dallas at right back. But in a 4-3-3, gets that right back role, and I'd push Dallas up into the right wing position. So who would you guys go for maybe on the left then? I know neither of us are really blessed with incredible wingers.
I'd play Connolly on the left. I mean, Connolly can play up top as part of it too, but when we play 4-3-3, I think he's the obvious option on the left for us as well. So he'd be my choice. I know he's not had the best of time with it lately with Brighton, but I still think there's a lot of talent there, and I think he will be around for a long time to come.
Yeah, he's. I watched him kind of last season or 2 seasons ago when he came through, and he was very impressive. And I do really like him as a player. And one which I'm actually going to unite Northern Ireland fans and Republic of Ireland fans against me here is actually Jordan Jones. I'm a massive fan of him. I think since his move to Sunderland, albeit in League One, he's really been tearing it up there. And he's the player that maybe I would say the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland don't really have an equivalent of, in the sense that he's that mercurial talent. He's got that ability to take a player on or beat a couple of men and put a cross in on either foot. So he's somebody I'm very excited about. Obviously, didn't really work out for him at Rangers. He's 26, 27 now, so he really has to kind of wise up and take his career by the scruff of the neck. But he would be an option for me on the left. I didn't even consider Connolly. I actually didn't realise he could play on the left. So maybe I'm wide of the mark with that one. But yes, for the Northern Irish bias, if I had to put somebody in the left wing, I'd go for JJ.
You could do that, and then you could play one of Robinson or Connolly then down the middle, with the experience from club football.
I've got Robinson down the middle in the 4-3-3. Yeah, so
just even from your own point of view, Gary touched on as well, was the young lad that plays right back. What's his name again with Blackpool?
Oh, Daniel Ballard.
But Daniel Ballard, and you touched on with Jones there, albeit why they are playing League One level at the moment, both then respective clubs, Sunderland are not neck and neck for automatic promotion. Blackpool are on a good run for the playoffs. There is a good chance they both will be playing championship football next season. That will raise their stock and raise their profile as well. Just kind of, I might move it on a small bit because we're kind of touching 50 minutes now, so I might try and keep it in around the hour mark or so. Just the talks as well of an All-Ireland League have resurfaced. Obviously, last summer, the then 10 Premier Division clubs here in the League of Ireland wrote proposals to the FAI. 10 of the 12 clubs in the Northern Irish Premiership, they also were in favour. I think Dungannon and Cliftonville were the only ones that didn't. And then we're seeing on Sunday morning the Belfast Telegraph having an article saying that now the IFA, after rejecting a previous proposal from Kerry businessman Kieran Ludick, have I said that right, Gary?
Kieran Lucid.
Lucid, sorry. But now they've been kind of open proposal to this idea from UEFA. I suppose first and foremost, Gary, I'll get your thoughts, and then what do you think yourself then, Andy?
Yeah, my thoughts, I think this could be different to a national team, and particularly as UEFA are considering it in cross-border leagues, and something like Belgium and the Netherlands are talking about a joint league, and there is talk of some kind of an North Atlantic league with the Scandinavian countries and possibly Scotland. So, I mean, let's be honest here. Both our leagues are in the bottom, probably 15 or so in UEFA. And most people on this island probably support a club across the water in England. I mean, Andy, and you're a Liverpool fan as well, Ger. Andy's already mentioned he's a Liverpool fan as well. So I think potentially this is a good idea if there was proper money and proper marketing behind it, and the idea would be to have maybe 10 clubs that would really raise the standard, and I suppose get to the level that I would see the Norwegian, the Danish clubs being at the moment, which I don't think our clubs are at. And so I think we could reach the kind of the standard of the leagues in the 20 to 35 range in Europe. I know our league in particular has maybe got into the top 35, but realistically it's probably a bit below that. So if there was significant investment, a very good TV deal, because frankly our clubs, and I think the Irish League clubs are making very little out of TV at the moment as well. If there was significant investment, a good TV deal, possibly even some cross-border grants, because I know a lot of money has been, since the Good Friday or Belfast Agreement, a lot of money has been pumped into cross-border projects and things like that. If there was significant investment there. And then for my biased hat on, from a Limerick bias, I know Treaty United are currently just coming into the second tier of football here, so we'd be a long way off even the Premier Division. But I would like to see it encompass quite a bit of the island, and I'm talking Cork as well, because I mean the only team from Cork City are in the second tier here as well. I mean, our league down here is very much kind of a Dublin, Dundalk, East Coast bias.
Really kind of like
East Coast. And I mean, if you're going to have a 10-team or 12-team All-Ireland league, you don't want all the teams being between Dublin and Dundalk. And I mean, would even Sligo Rovers or Derry City get in at the moment? And Derry City obviously are the team that would straddle the cross-border point of it. So I think it would actually be very important that the league would actually cover from a geographical spread the whole island. And because currently in the Republic, the second, third and fourth cities, as in Cork, Limerick and Galway, don't have a club in the top tier as it is. So that, even allowing for my bias, and I know my very strong Limerick bias, I'm not trying to hide that, but and maybe that's been unfair, because if you look at how successful the Dublin clubs, I'm sure you have a different opinion, Jar, because Pats are doing incredibly well. Shamrock Rovers are doing incredibly well. Bows are doing incredibly well. I mean, you have three very strong Dublin clubs that are regularly competing in Europe. Dundalk, just up the road, are doing incredibly well. Have been in the group stages of the Europa League twice in the last 5 years. So maybe I'm being a bit unfair in the geography point of view, but from the All Ireland League point of view, yes, if there is significant money marketing behind it, and with the ability the clubs to have much bigger budgets. Because if I look at the Irish League perspective, and clubs like Linfield and Glentoran in particular, they're absolutely massive clubs with potentially massive support, and the crowds they draw when they meet would be significantly higher probably than the crowds that our clubs would get. But then Linfield and Glentoran can play in front of significantly smaller crowds when they play the likes of Dungannon Swifts or Warren Point. So, I'd love to hear Andy's thoughts.
Yeah, so first thing I guess to say is I support Bangor. I'm a Bangor boy, which will mean probably absolutely nothing to your listeners, but we're in the third division right now. More recently than that, we actually dropped down to a regional league, and it's been well over a decade since Bangor have been in the Irish Premiership. So like, this doesn't really affect me on any sort of level. We'll still be playing the wee small teams from Northern Ireland. But I mean, I think it's very interesting because there seems to be, I mean, obviously the 10 of the 12 clubs backed it back in 2019, and the IFA in the end rejected the proposal. But from what I hear about this, and in that Belfast Telegraph article, there weren't like too many details on like exactly what the finances would be or what the TV deal would be and things like that. But I mean, as I say, I support Bangor. My dad's a Linfield supporter, and I used to go down to some of the Linfield games when I was a bit younger. And I used to always enjoy the Setanta Cup games. I used to enjoy that there was a bit of an edgier atmosphere, as long as it obviously didn't cross the obvious boundary. But I quite enjoyed that. It always drew out some crowds. You were always a bit more nervous going to play at a team from down south. And I remember. I can't remember exactly what year it was, maybe 2007, 2008, where Linfield went on a run to the Setanta Cup final and were beaten on penalties by Drogheda United. But like, those are the memories of going to follow Linfield that I cherish and really enjoy. And albeit I wasn't old enough to remember the Setanta Cup wins. So from my perspective, you know, I'm living over here in Liverpool, but if I'm home in the summer and there's a summer league, I'm far more likely to go down and watch Linfield versus St. Pat's or Linfield versus Shelburne or Dundalk than I am, for example, Linfield versus Dungannon Swifts. So I think, you know, the idea that it will draw more fans is definitely appealing, and I think it would be a good thing for the television. It would be a good product. The Irish League games have been shown on TV this year, and yes, there's not much money coming in from it, but I think it is drawn in, you know, a significant amount of viewers. And there's a Friday night game, Saturday 5:30 games as well, which have been good, and I've actually enjoyed tuning in to watch. So the question really is European places. There's 4 European places for Northern Irish clubs every year at the moment. And I was reading an article last night, which I think in 2018, Ballymena United came second in the Irish League and picked up 400,000 just from being in the Europa League qualifiers that year. So, you know, that is a really significant amount of money for those clubs, albeit it's not a constant revenue stream because it's different clubs in Europe every year, bar maybe Linfield and Crusaders up until a couple of years ago. But the other side of that is, will the TV deal kind of account for that? You know, we know certainly in the Premier League, I know we're talking on a much greater scale here, but in the Premier League, the TV money massively dwarfs even the Champions League money that teams get, and that's really what's what's made the Premier League clubs a lot richer in recent years without just having kind of external investment. So it would all depend on that. We obviously don't know a lot about the finances at the minute, but in terms of like maybe bringing it back to how it would help the national teams, I think you look at there's been quite a few players from the Republic of Ireland who either have come from the League of Ireland or who have or who were still playing in the League of Ireland when they were called up. And obviously Stephen Kenny's put his trust in a lot of players from the League of Ireland as well. And it's the same with the Northern Irish team as well. The likes of Gavin White, Niall McGinn, going back a little bit, you've got Gareth McCauley as well, played in the Irish League until he was about 25, and Stuart Dallas too. So these players are coming through and benefiting from the Irish League, and I think the inevitable raising of standards will help both national teams. The only other concern, just to finish up, because I know you don't want this to go on so long, but the only other concern is kind of the transition from Northern Irish clubs into full-time football. Larne transitioned a couple of years ago, and it's taken them like 2 or 3 years to really get used to it. I know it was the same with Crusaders, who their players were picking up a lot of injuries, going from training twice a week to 5 times a week. These players, their bodies aren't used to this level of physical preparation. So even the likes of building gyms and these things that you need for full-time football take time. And I know this proposal is, I think, for 2024, but there would maybe need to be something for Northern Irish clubs whereby the short-term shortfalls of getting used to full-time football, whether that doesn't leave them behind in the long term in terms of clubs from the Republic of Ireland constantly getting the European places and constantly getting that revenue coming in, which could leave some of the Northern Irish clubs behind. So there are some of the concerns that we have from a Northern Irish point of view, but I would personally quite like to see it. I don't know if that represents the views of all Irish League supporters or all supporters in Northern Ireland. It probably doesn't even represent the majority of them, but from a personal point of view, as somebody who has no kind of skin in the game, being a Bangor supporter, I would like to see it.
I think though, like I'd be saying, I would like to see it because it's going to lead hopefully to better sponsorship, better TV deals, better interest. It's going to possibly then lead to better finances for clubs, players then kind of getting better wages out of it, maybe staying around in the league a lot more. Like the big problem here in the League of Ireland is just the 1 year kind of contracts. Maybe they might have more stable contracts for themselves. I think as well, the fact it's like 12 teams in Northern Ireland, is it similar to Scotland? You have 3 games in the league splits, or does everyone play each other 4 times?
No, 3 games league splits, 38 games.
Same as Scotland. Like here we have a scenario situation with a 10-team division. There's 4 league matches. And then if you throw on cup competitions, you could be playing the one team 6 times throughout a quarter of a season. Where like with Kieran's proposal, that you still have maybe your traditional first half of the season, everyone plays each other home and away, and then kind of split and break up. It's great just for novelty, just to kind of break it up. For away days, for fans from Sligo, Derry, Dublin clubs go to Warrenpoint, Newry, Dungannon, the Belfast clubs like Glentoran and Cliftonville, and vice versa. It would be just really nice to kind of break it up in a bit of novelty. I think I've seen something it's a 5.5 hour trip from Cork to Cliftonville, but look, they could stay somewhere overnight and break it up or whatever else like that. Just one kind of last thing, or one final kind of thing. We've seen it here in the last couple of years, like that the league, obviously with Dundalk now having get into the Europa League group stage the last couple of years, a major breakthrough. And obviously now with a situation with COVID, a few games getting televised, fans can't go to matches. We have our Watch LOI stream. We now have the LOI TV for the first division. What's kind of the situation, kind of the feel at the moment in surrounding the Northern Irish Premiership? I know Lingfield came very close to the Europa League group stages in 2019. They bet Quarbag in the first leg. I think Glenaville bet Mold in one leg of the Europa League in 2018. Yep. Last season, I think,
Erling Haaland was playing that night, interestingly.
Who?
Erling Haaland was playing that night, and
Solskjaer was the manager as well. So yeah. And then
so I always say to my Manchester United supporting mates, your manager couldn't beat Gary Hamilton.
And I think, if I'm correct in saying, well, last summer, Coleraine bet Maribor, who have been in the Champions League. So where is the overall feel with the Northern Irish Premiership at the moment, and how was kind of COVID affected? I know that they kind of more or less just stopped their season when it hit last year, as opposed to resuming it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the arguments from the Northern Irish perspective. Our clubs are competing in Europe more and more, just with the better product of the Irish League and the bit more money that's coming into that. You mentioned Linfield there; it was an incredible run. A bit unlucky in the end. I was actually at the game against Qarabag. We were 3-1 up. Shane Lavery had an incredible game that night. And it was a late stupid penalty that we gave away, and I remember saying to my dad at the time, that goal that made it 3-2, that will ultimately kill us, and it did in the end, going over there. But in the end, it was only on away goals, and You mentioned Coleraine with that incredible result in Maribor, and they ran Motherwell very close actually as well. It was it was 2-2 in the end. Northern Irish goalkeeper Trevor Carson actually saved the penalties for Motherwell. So, Northern Irish clubs, they are definitely improving in Europe, and you go back to the days of even 10 years ago where even Linfield were getting hammered 7 and 8 by teams like Randers of Denmark and other teams like that. And it doesn't help, obviously, that of course, the League of Ireland teams have the benefit of it being kind of midway through their season rather than the Irish League, where a lot of teams have just been back training for a week and are part-time in any case. So I'm not really sure whether that's like a flash in the pan for Northern Ireland teams in Europe, or whether that's kind of the level of the league that's improving in that way. And that's going to kind of be the norm for teams to be getting through these ties, which 10 years ago they wouldn't have even had a hope in. But I just think like the overall standard of the league. You mentioned like I quite enjoy the idea of the transatlantic competition, the like of Anderlecht doing Portadown away or something like that. But yeah, I'm not sure. I think just obviously there have been a couple of League of Ireland clubs who've qualified for the group stages recently, and that was an incredible achievement. And the idea that 5 or 6 Northern Irish clubs could take a punt on winning an All Ireland League and perhaps push to get into the group stages. I know Larne have a very ambitious project. For example, Linfield will always be challenging in any league they're in. So I'm not sure what the actual thinking is behind it, and there's definitely a concern from the Northern Irish clubs that we'd be a little bit left behind, or that we'd, naturally with the populations of the two countries, there's always going to be more League of Ireland clubs in Europe, or more clubs from down south in Europe than up north. So I'm not really sure, but I think, there's definitely a sea change in Northern Irish mentality of clubs. I mentioned Larne, Linfield, even Glentoran have a very ambitious project. So they'll back themselves to go and win an All-Ireland League. And as the standard of the league improves over the next couple of years with the TV deal, with the money coming in, they'll back themselves to get into Europe as well.
Gary, as our senior analysis here, anything you want to touch on or ask before we finish up?
Yeah, I mean, Andy covered it. I mean, the likes of Linfield and Glentoran in particular, I know Larne have actually done a fantastic job going full-time. And I know Lee J. Lynch from Limerick is playing there and playing very well and really enjoying life up there. And they may well come to challenge. But, historically, the likes of Linfield, Glentoran are absolutely massive clubs. Potentially, Linfield are the biggest club in the island. I know Shamrock Rovers fans may be screaming at this, saying it's absolute rubbish. But, going back, both Linfield and Glentoran have reached the quarterfinals of European competition, which none of our clubs have ever managed to do. I know I'm going back a bit in ancient history there. But, yeah, I would not be surprised if there was an all-island league, that the likes of Linfield and Glentoran would be very, very capable of winning it. I mean, Linfield, and Andy said he was too young, but Linfield won the first Setanta Cup in 2005. I was in Talca Park that day, and it was a cracking game and a great atmosphere. And I think Talca was pretty much full that day, and that shows the potential. Well, I'm sorry to see the Setanta Cup go. Particularly in the early days, it was absolutely fantastic. And there was also, because there was a great TV deal, there was really serious money involved. And that for me would have to be the case for an all-island league, to just make it a no-brainer at that point of view, that the clubs would be earning, because none of our clubs on this island are earning any money from TV at the moment. And then you look across the water and see the kind of money they're earning in the Premier League. So it's and even in things like the Scottish League, even the Championship League One, the money they're making from TV is often far more important than the money they make from gate receipts. And our clubs currently, we've nothing from gate receipts, from making nothing from TV either. So that's where I think the potential is, and also just to lift the whole standard, and just even lift the perception as well. As Andy mentioned, some of the Irish League games on TV have been superb this season. They've been really great to watch. It's been a great TV product. But I bet the clubs are making virtually nothing out of it. And the same with our own league, Ger, that we've got some really high quality games that can that just need. I think it's the perception or the image or something like that, because the vast majority of football fans here still don't go and watch our games, and maybe it's just something to get people to Dalymount, to Tala, the Markets Field, hopefully on a Friday night, or indeed to the Oval or Windsor Park or Inver Park, to the big. To see them as being the big games. You can still watch your Liverpool and your Manchester United on TV at the weekend as well.
Yeah, and just can I pick up dead quick on a point you make there, Gary? Because the TV, like, it would be a massive part of it, but maybe one concern the Irish League clubs would have is that, there always will, well, not always, but there always will be kind of 3 or 4 European spots every year in an Irish league. Whereas with the TV deal, we've kind of seen, certainly this year with France, the TV deal's fallen through, and a lot of those French clubs are really in the mud in that respect. I think PSG are going to have to sell a couple of players, and there's a real problem with that. There's a shortfall of nearly 200 million. So, if that TV deal was something that would be kept up, and we have to kind of have faith in the product and the standard of the football that will be shown on TV, that people would keep tuning in. It would have to be something that would be consistent and not just for 3 or 4 years like the Setanta Cup was, rather than, because then you could find Irish League clubs complaining that they've missed out on not getting European spots. They're not getting that money, and then worst case scenario, there's no TV deal either. But it would kind of all depend on that. So it is a bit of a risk in that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, European money is massive for our clubs as well. It's absolutely crucial, and the qualifying for Europe makes such a difference, and the money involved is so important from that perspective. So I don't know if there's any way of safeguarding the 8 European spots the island currently has. I mean, lose that dropping to 4. I know Kieran Lucid had a way or some kind of a formula around that. I'm not sure if UEFA would play ball with something like that. But yeah, so even from that perspective, the TV deal has to be significant to make that worthwhile.
Yeah.
I think there was even a strong case, like before COVID and everything else like that, like when matches were televised here, that clubs actually were missing out, and because of the fact that there is no proper TV deal, and it was dropping revenue because the game was on TV. So like that is a major concern going forward. And even just touch on your point as well, go back there, Gary, about Lingfield and Dundalk. I know they had the United Nations Cup there in 2019. I know Dundalk ends up winning the second leg quite comprehensively, but you and Paul were at the first leg in Windsor Park, or the National Park or National Stadium. But I think that was a more fair reflective of really kind of what the standard is going to be like. But that game was 1-1. I think Lingfield had games in hand coming up from the Europa League run and stuff like that, so maybe they weren't fully tuned into the second leg. But I definitely think it would be an even balance and even split. And I do think the European place is going to be the big concern going forward. I think like Kieran Lucid's proposal, it is the best one. Like, you still have your separate leagues, just play your 2 rounds of games. That decides the European places, but there's more complications then with UEFA and stuff like that. So it is something that I think is definitely going to lead to a lot more debate, and we're going to hear a lot more of over the next while or so. Just before we go and everything else like that, Andy, I suppose this is a good opportunity for free marketing and free advertisement for yourself to tell us about the Spirit of 16 podcast and where people can find it.
Yeah, so it's a national team podcast on the Northern Ireland national team. There's no real Irish league or anything like that for anyone who's tuned in for that. But yeah, we're on SoundCloud, Spotify, and iTunes. We're not anything big. It's just a bit of fun to talk about Northern Ireland pre and post game. And yeah, that's pretty much what we've been doing. So obviously it's an international football podcast, so we're not doing it all the time. It's just kind of around the games. But our socials, we're on Facebook and we're on Twitter at Spirit of 2016 Pod. So anyone wants to go on and follow us over there, we do some updates on players playing at club level and how they're doing, and kind of try and keep it consistent throughout the year. So yeah, doing loads of content on there. So yes, please do follow.
Great stuff. Keep it up there, lads. That's where we're going to leave it today here on Irish Football Fan TV. I'd like to thank Andy for joining us from Liverpool, and of course Gary, of course, joining us as well as always. Make sure to drop a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. But until next time, we'll chat to you again.